she was told again and again. Not yet, not ready, not allowed. But when the battlefield erupted in fire, only one pilot's calm voice answered. Her name, Isabella Carter, the woman who proved the sky belongs to everyone brave enough to fight for it. Isabella Carter was 10 years old when she first saw a helicopter land in the dusty field near her village. The blades shook the ground. Children screamed and ran. Isabella did not move. She stared at the giant bird of steel and whispered, "One day, I'll fly that." From that moment, the dream lived inside her. Other children played games. She sat on the ground, sketching aircraft from memory, her notebooks filled with strange drawings of wings, rotors, and engines. Teachers scolded her for not doing math problems. She nodded but kept drawing. At home, she built models out of cardboard. She hung them from her ceiling, a private air fleet above her bed. Her father, a farmer, laughed at first. Her mother worried. "It's too big for a village girl," she said. But Isabella's eyes burned with certainty. She did not argue. She just said, "I will fly." In high school, she joined a small aviation club. They only had one old glider, but it was enough. The first time Isabella sat in the cockpit, her hands trembled. When the glider lifted into the air, silent and slow, she felt her chest expand. The earth fell away, and the sky opened wide. It was not a helicopter, not yet, but it was freedom. Her classmates teased her. Only rich people become pilots. Some laughed. "You, a farmer's daughter? Forget it." Isabella said nothing. She smiled quietly and kept studying aircraft, magazines she borrowed from the library. When she turned 18, she applied to the Air Academy. The exam was brutal. Mathematics, physics, medical checks, physical training. Hundreds failed. Isabella passed. On the day she received her acceptance letter, she ran to the same dusty field where she had first seen the helicopter. She held the paper in her hands, tears in her eyes. She whispered again, "I will fly." The academy was harder than anything she had imagined. Early mornings of running until her lungs burned, long days of theory classes on aerodynamics and engineering, nights spent in the library, memorizing manuals until her vision blurred. Many cadets dropped out. Some gave up. Isabella stayed, but staying came at a cost. Her body ached. Her mind grew tired. Sometimes, lying in bed, she wondered if the dream was worth it. But then she remembered the girl standing barefoot in the field, staring at the helicopter. That memory pushed her forward. Finally, after 2 years, the cadets were allowed near real helicopters. Isabella touched the metal body with reverence, like touching a sacred object. When the instructor allowed her to sit inside, her hands wrapped around the controls. The instructor said, "Ready?" Isabella only nodded. The blades spun. The machine lifted. The world tilted. Her heart raced. For the first time, Isabella felt what she had dreamed of since childhood. The helicopter rose higher, the earth shrinking. "Below," she whispered, "I belong here." That night, she could not sleep. She lay awake, replaying every moment, the vibration, the noise, the freedom. The girl who once dreamed under the village sky had touched her destiny. But destiny is never easy. The next chapters of her life would test her in ways she never imagined. The first months at the Air Academy nearly broke Isabella. The mornings began before dawn. She ran until her legs felt heavy, her lungs burning with each breath. After that came drills, classes, and endless discipline. The instructors were harsh. "You think you're special because you're here. You're not. Everyone is replaceable," one barked at her. Isabella kept her head high, but inside, the words stung. Her classmates treated her with curiosity at first. Some ignored her. Others whispered that she would not last. A few even said it out loud. "This is not a place for a girl," one cadet smirked during a drill. Isabella clenched her fists but stayed silent. She knew words would not win. Only results would. The first time she touched helicopter controls, She made mistakes. Her hands were too stiff. Her landings were rough. The instructor sighed loudly. Carter, are you even paying attention? The humiliation burned. She walked back to the dorm that night, ready to cry. But instead of giving in, she opened the manual again and studied until her eyes ached. She practiced every chance she got. While others joked and rested, she stayed in the simulator. She replayed each mistake, then corrected it. Slowly, her movements grew sharper. Her confidence grew. She stopped fearing the controls. She began to guide them like an extension of her own hands. By the second year, things changed. During one exercise, a sudden crosswind pushed the helicopter sideways. Another cadet panicked, nearly losing control. Isabella was quick. She adjusted, steady hands correcting the drift, guiding the machine safely down. The instructor's face was unreadable. But later, he stopped her. His voice was calm, almost respectful. Good instincts, Carter. Keep that up. It was only a few words, but they fueled her. Yet the challenges did not stop. One of her lowest moments came during a long night flight exercise. She was tired, her focus slipping. A mistake in navigation cost her team valuable points. In the debrief, the senior officer's words cut deep. Carter, maybe you don't belong in combat aviation. Logistics would suit you better. She went back to her room, shaking. The words echoed in her mind. Don't belong. For the first time, she thought of quitting. She sat on her bed, helmet on her lap, and whispered, maybe they're right. But then she remembered the barefoot girl in the field, staring at the helicopter, whispering, I will fly. That memory pulled her back. She decided she would not prove the officers right. She would prove them wrong. From then on, Isabella carried herself differently. She stopped trying to blend in. She spoke up during debriefs. She asked sharper questions. She pushed harder in training. Her classmates noticed. Some still doubted her, but others began to respect her. Slowly, the whispers changed from she won't last to she works harder than all of us. The day she graduated, her parents came. Her mother wept quietly when Isabella walked across the stage in uniform. Her father, who had once called her dream too big, stood straighter than she had ever seen him. As she accepted her wings, Isabella knew the real fight had only just begun. The academy had been training, but the world outside would test her in ways she could not yet imagine, and she was ready. Graduation gave Isabella her wings, but it did not give her what she wanted, most combat orders. She trained harder than ever. Every drill, every mission simulation, every hour in the cockpit, she pushed herself. Her evaluations were strong. Her instructors noted her precision. Some even called her ice, because she stayed calm under pressure. Yet when the assignments came, she was left behind. Her male classmates received deployment orders. Afghanistan, Iraq, real combat, real missions. Isabella's envelope was different. Stateside training support, it read. She stared at the words again and again, her chest heavy. Training support. She was to help others prepare for combat, but never see it herself. She forced a smile. When others celebrated their deployments, she congratulated them. But when she returned to her room, she sat in silence, the letter shaking in her hand. Why train me if you won't let me fight? She whispered to herself. The weeks that followed were bitter. She flew training flights, daily, guiding younger cadets. She practiced maneuvers, perfected her skills, fired weapons in exercises. She did everything except the one thing she wanted most, combat. At night, she wrote in her journal. Page after page filled with anger and questions. Why am I good enough to train others but not good enough to fight? Why am I always told to wait? Her commanding officer noticed her frustration. One evening, after a long day, he stopped her. His tone was gentle but firm. Carter, you're one of the best we have. But the system moves slow. Be patient. Isabella nodded out of respect, but inside she boiled. She had not worked this hard to sit on the sidelines. She had not sacrificed years of her life to be told, wait. Some of her fellow pilots noticed too. A few whispered cruelly, she's good, but they'll never send her downrange. Not worth the risk. Others laughed, she's a trainer, that's all. The words cut deep, but Isabella refused to show it. She held her head high and kept flying. Still, the doubts haunted her. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining herself in combat, hearing radios crackle with panic, guiding soldiers through danger. She knew she could do it, but the system did not give her the chance. Her lowest point came when one of her closest friends from training a man who had nearly failed his courses was deployed. He sent her letters from the desert, describing real missions, the adrenaline, the bond with troops. He wrote, "This is what we trained for." She read the words with a tight throat. He had barely scraped through training, yet he was living the dream she had earned many times over. That night, Isabella sat in her quarters with her helmet in her lap. The visor reflected her tired face. For a long time, she thought about quitting. She imagined walking away, leaving the army behind. But then she remembered the girl in the field, whispering to the sky, "One day, I'll fly that." She closed her eyes and whispered again, "Not yet, but one day." The system could keep her grounded. It could deny her orders, but it could not stop her from being ready. So she trained harder. She stayed late in the simulators. She studied manuals until the numbers blurred in her mind. She worked with her crews until they moved as one. Months passed, and Isabella's life became a cycle of training flights and quiet frustration. Every morning she strapped into her Apache, ran through her pre-flight checks, and lifted into the sky. Every evening she landed, knowing the missions were practice only. She had mastered night flying. Through the green glow of night vision goggles, she skimmed low over treetops, moving like a shadow across the earth. She drilled weapons training until it felt like second nature. Rockets, cannons, missiles, all delivered with precision. She learned to coordinate with ground troops, anticipating their needs before they asked. Her reputation grew. Younger pilots asked for her advice. Even those who once doubted her admitted quietly that she could fly better than most men already in combat. Recognition came, but recognition without opportunity felt like another cage. Then came the joint exercise. It was supposed to be routine Army helicopters working with the Air Force in a large-scale desert drill. But when Isabella arrived at the base, she saw something new. On the runway, parked like predators waiting to strike, stood sleek, angular jets, F-22 Raptors. She had never seen them so close before. Their sharp edges seemed built to cut the sky. The Air Force pilots walked with confidence, helmets tucked under their arms. They carried themselves like men who knew they belonged in combat. Isabella felt a pang of envy, not for the jets, but for the freedom. No one told them to wait. The first day of the exercise was brutal. Enemy ambushes, sudden weather changes, communication failures, all simulated to test the pilots. Isabella thrived. She guided her Apache through a canyon under simulated fire, covering infantry as they advanced. She landed sweating, her pulse racing, but her crew alive. On the edge of the field, she noticed a group of Air Force pilots watching. One of them approached later, in the hangar. He was tall, lean, his flight suit marked with the patch of the 27th Fighter Squadron. "Nice flying out there," he said, voiced casual but sincere. "Not every helicopter pilot can pull that off." Isabella blinked, surprised. Most jet pilots dismissed helicopter crews as slow and clumsy. "Thanks," she replied cautiously. "I'm Mark," he said, offering his hand. "If you win the doors," she shook it firmly. "Lieutenant Isabella Carter, Apache." They talked briefly about tactics. She expected him to leave quickly, but he stayed, asking what it was like to fly nap of Earth at night, to skim so low you could feel the trees. She found herself explaining details she rarely shared. The next day, during the debrief, chaos erupted. The exercise had revealed gaps between air and ground coordination. Commanders argued, then Mark spoke up. Lieutenant Carter had one of the best runs yesterday. Her cover allowed infantry to move safely. We should look at how she managed it. All eyes turned to her. Heat rose in her cheeks. She spoke carefully, explaining her approach. For once, people listened. Really listened. That evening, over dinner in the mess hall, she admitted her frustration. She told Mark about the hours she had flown, the trainees she had shaped, and the combat missions she had never been given. Her voice was steady, but the bitterness was there. "I was trained for combat," she said softly, "but I've never been allowed to fight." Mark studied her, then shook his head. "That's insane. You've got the skill, the mindset. Keeping you out of combat, that's wasted talent." She tried to shrug, to hide how much his words meant. She had heard encouragement before, but this felt different. He wasn't offering sympathy. He was stating fact. And then he said the words she would never forget. "We need you." Simple words, but powerful. They cut through the fog of doubt and bureaucracy like sunlight through clouds. For the first time in months, Isabella felt something she thought she had lost: hope. The joint exercise ended, but Isabella returned to her unit with something she had not felt in a long time: renewed fire. Mark's words stayed with her. "We need you." Back home, she changed her approach. For years, she had worked quietly, hoping someone would notice her. Now, she stopped hiding in the background. During debriefs, she spoke up, offering sharp tactical insights. She volunteered for difficult drills. She made herself impossible to ignore. At first, some officers frowned. A few muttered that she was too outspoken. But younger pilots listened. They came to her for advice, not just on flying, but on leadership. She found herself mentoring them, guiding them through mistakes she had once made alone. The turning point came during a large-scale army exercise. The scenario simulated a convoy under heavy attack. Communications broke down, panic spreading across the radio. The mission teetered on collapse. Isabella did not wait for orders. She stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "All call signs. This is Carter. Reassigning channels. Focus on priority targets. Infantry, hold position. Apaches, follow my lead." In minutes, chaos turned to order. The convoy pushed forward. The Apaches delivered precise firepower. The exercise ended in success. When they landed, the commanding officer, a colonel known for his strictness, pulled her aside. That, he said simply, was leadership. Good work. It wasn't a promise of deployment, but recognition mattered, and in the army, recognition was fuel. Word spread. Officers began to say, "Carter can handle it. She's dependable." Fellow pilots, once dismissive, now sought her input. Even ground commanders took note. They liked how she spoke their language, how she asked about their needs, instead of staying distant. One young infantry officer told her after a drill, "Ma'am, if we ever go down range, I'd want you in the sky above me." The word struck her deeply. Her fight was no longer just about herself. It was about the soldiers who trusted her. Still, setbacks came. One promotion board passed her over, citing limited operational experience. The irony was crushing. How could she gain experience if they never deployed her? She walked out of the boardroom with clenched fists, her teeth grinding. But instead of breaking her, the rejection hardened her. She doubled down. She took every tough assignment: night flights in bad weather, high-risk drills, joint exercises. She embraced them all. Her allies grew. A colonel respected her composure. A ground commander trusted her judgment. Fellow pilots admitted she made them better. Air Force officers who had flown beside her mentioned her name in reports. Piece by piece, the invisible wall was cracking. Through it all, She and Mark stayed in touch. Their conversations were short, but steady. He always reminded her, change takes time. Keep flying. The right moment will come. His faith in her never wavered, and slowly, she began to believe it too. By the end of the year, Isabella was no longer seen as just the female Apache pilot left on the sidelines. She was becoming a leader, a name that carried weight in briefings. The old whispers of doubt grew quieter, but the army did not change quickly. For every officer who saw her value, another still clung to tradition. The phrase "not yet" haunted her. Not yet ready, not yet policy, not yet allowed. Isabella had learned to live with "not yet." But deep inside, she knew her chance was coming. The world outside was changing. Sooner or later, the army would have to change too. And when that day came, she would be ready. Tension overseas was rising. Deployments increased. Pilots were being shuffled at the last minute to fill urgent rosters. Rumors spread through Isabella's unit that new names were being added to combat lists. She didn't dare hope. She had seen her name removed too many times before. But then one morning, her commander called her in. On his desk lay a manila envelope. "Carter," he said, sliding it across to her. She opened it with steady hands. Her eyes scanned the lines, her pulse racing. The words stood out like fire. Combat deployment. For a moment, the room blurred. She blinked, afraid the words would vanish. But they stayed. Black ink on white paper, undeniable. She was going. That night, Isabella sat on her bunk holding the orders. Her helmet rested beside her, the visor reflecting her face. She whispered, "It's here." Finally. The weeks before deployment were a blur of preparation. She drilled harder, checked gear again, and wrote letters home. Her parents tried to hide their fear. Her mother clutched her hand tightly at the airport, whispering, "Come back." When the transport plane lifted into the sky, carrying her toward a combat zone, Isabella closed her eyes. The hum of the engines was steady, almost calming. She thought of the barefoot girl in the dusty field, whispering, "One day, I'll fly that." Now, that day had come. The desert heat hit her like a wall when she stepped off the plane. The base buzzed with activity, convoys rumbling, helicopters lifting, radios crackling. Everything smelled of dust, fuel, and tension. Her first mission came quickly, escorting a convoy through hostile territory. The kind of mission she had trained for her entire life. As her Apache lifted off, the familiar vibrations filled her bones. The radio crackled with the convoy commander's voice. The valley ahead was narrow, perfect for ambush. Then it happened. Gunfire erupted. Smoke rose. An armored vehicle was hit. Panic filled the radio. Isabella's pulse surged, but her voice was calm. "Convoy, this is Apache 2-1. We see you. We've got you covered." She banked low, scanning the ridges. Enemy fire flashed. Her weapons officer called out targets. Together they unleashed rockets and cannon fire with surgical precision. Within minutes, the ambush broke. The convoy pushed forward. Soldiers who might have died that day lived to fight another. When Isabella landed back at base, sweat plastered her hair to her forehead. The infantry commander sought her out.